Hello there. I'm out on another morning walk. Learning to fly gliders was a totally unplanned step into a lifelong hobby or addiction for me. It was a really serendipitous event. At the time, it was the only way, I thought, to get some experience of what flying an aircraft really is like, to get hands on experience on my fascination with aviation. Getting a power plane license was completely out of reach financially for me at that time, up until the universe decided that it was the next step to take. Hey, I'm Wolf, I'm a retired physicist and a glider and tailwheel pilot. After I got my PhD in Switzerland, I took on a postdoc position at a university in the US. And of course, the first task was to find a new home. A new home for me, the glider pilot, and my glider activities. So I asked around, and soon enough I became a member of Nutmeg Soaring. And the next step then was to get the US glider license based on my German one. I went to the nearest FAA office and had a really nice first encounter with the authorities. Remember, this was in the early 80s. When the guy at the counter called my name, he said, "Wolf, here's your new US glider license. Enjoy your flying, but also think about getting a power plane license because it's much cheaper here than over there." Now that got me thinking. So when I came back to the university, I started to inquire at the flying club at the university. At first, I couldn't believe what the membership coordinator of Yale Aviation told me about conditions and costs. And when it had sunk in, I signed up immediately. I simply couldn't afford not to get the power license. And I started instruction right away. Flying went well, of course, because there my glide experience came into play. Procedures and communications were where I had to devote more attention to. We were flying out of New Haven Airport at that time, meaning that proper radio protocol was mandatory from the get-go, which was good in the long run, because after I had gotten used to all that, the rapid-fire instructions from New York Approach or Boston Control on my cross-country flights didn't bother me at all. I made good progress, and I also managed to scare my instructor twice. Back in Germany, pretty much all my glide instructors were ex-World War II pilots, and they never could let go of some of their flying habits. So after a long soaring flight, we would do 1 or 2 loops, spin down to pattern altitude. All of this was pretty much standard operating procedure. And stalls and spin recovery was an indispensable maneuver back then. So when I found out that the Tomahawk that we were using for primary instruction in New Haven was approved for spins, I talked to my instructor and asked him if he could do some spin training. He looked at me with wide eyes and said, "You want to do what?" But in the end, he conceded and we went out and spun that little baby round and round and round. Much faster, of course, than a glider, because with its short wings, there's much less inertia to turn around. The second time was when we were entering the downwind, and about 300 feet below, the Cherokee 6 overtook us. He grabbed the control for an evasive maneuver and said, "Haven't you seen that sucker? He almost ran into it." And I said, "Well, yeah, I saw that. But, he's way down below. There's no danger for a midair." And of course, from my perspective, from the glider world, this was normal. If you were flying with 5 or 10, sometimes even more, gliders in a tight thermal, circling up, you're used to flying in very close proximity with other airplanes. Nothing strange or dangerous for me. After I got my license, I used several of the smaller Cherokees like the 180 and the 140 to do what I thought general aviation was meant for. Escape for a camping weekend to a place too distant to get to it by car. It was wonderful. And when another postdoc came into our group, also a pilot with much more experience than I had, including an IFR rating, we started to fly from New Haven over to Long Island to work on a big experiment that we had mounted in Brookhaven National Laboratories over there. It was a great way to get experience, to get accustomed to special VFR in the crowded New York airspace, and to watch and learn from Nick when he displayed his IFR competence. I flew gliders and Pipers very regular at that time, and soon I realized that I would approach those different flights differently. Power flying was always on the flight plan with mandatory radio communications. There was more preparation, organization, and the whole adventure was more structured compared to our more spontaneous sorties in a glider. When the time came to return to Europe, after about 3.5 years, I had climbed up the Piper ladder, so to speak, by all those different Cherokee models, and had made it into the cockpit of an Arrow. And every step up was a new challenge, new possibilities, and was a lot of fun. The only other make and model I ever got my hands on while there was, can you believe it, a Cessna 170A. Unfortunately, it came too late into the game, and due to bad weather and my imminent departure for Switzerland, I couldn't complete the checkout, which was a pity. But looking back now, I think that was a sign that this particular tail dragger would eventually play a big role in my flying life. And I'll tell you more about it in upcoming videos. See you next time.